And I'm calling you now to please take your seats because we are about to start. It is time to welcome you for the final part of the final session of the Gaza Tribunal final day. It is time for us to hear the final outcome that will be presented to you within very few minutes. Now, for the beginning, you will hear Professor Dr. Osman Bülent Zulfikar, and he is a rector of the Istanbul University who has welcomed us all of these days and all of this time that we have been working and have been presenting you everything that we have done so far during the Gaza Tribunal. Mr. Zulfikar, please. The time is yours.
İyiliği sonsuz ikramı yüce Yaradanımıza.
We would like to. We're going to talk about this important issue, which is a topic in the world, and Istanbul University is hosting this event, and we get together. We wanted to thank you for that. We have our jury members in the table, and we wanted to thank everybody who attended this event. We would like to thank our professors in the organization team, and we would like to thank the presidents and the members, and we would like to thank distinguished students of the university, and we would like to thank ladies and gentlemen of this university. I salute you with all my heart, and I would like to thank you once more for your participation. If something crashes our feet, our whole body will feel that pain. And the day will go bad for you. And we will feel it in every part. This is how it's like in the world. If there is violence in one part of the world, we know that. We know that violence is something that you do wrong with fully acknowledging it. If you continue like that, you are doing this violence. And if it continues, then the other parts of the world will also react to it. And of course, because of some past business, we are seeing this. We are seeing this insensitivity, but the conscience of the world will not be relieved like that. So science is the solution to everything. If there's a problem, we can solve it with the science. And one of the important issues in the world is that we have this genocide. This is unfair. People are experiencing genocide. They had to leave their lands. This was like that for the past, and in the future it will be like that as well. But science world shouldn't stay insensitive. We should get together and we should talk about what we can do to prevent it. With all the details, we have to explain the situation and we have to apply it. And we also have to follow the process carefully. But of course, flyers are different. And as Istanbul University, after 7th October, it can be 9 or 10, we were protesting the Israel's attack. We also published our Senate decision, and all the other universities also share their sensitiveness, and they are continuing their works as well. This year we will not celebrate New Year, and in our university, in events, in programs, we would not have shows. we would not have music. We also announced that. We're seeing that these people are oppressed. In the part of the world, these people are being oppressed. We cannot say stop to it, but we have to share their pain, and that's why we gave this decision. We came up with this decision, and Istanbul University showed its stance. To my colleagues and to my students, I would like to thank them for their sensitivity in the presence of you.
Gazze mahkemelerinin ilk
So, if you remember the first session of the Gaza Tribunal, we also did that in our famous campus. We did that in this historical place, but today we are also here and we are at the final, and from many parts of the world, from different countries, we got our participants and we will listen their decisions. I think it will find its place in the public consciousness, and I think the government institutions will do what they have to do, and the decisions we will get will be beneficial for humanity. Hopefully it will be beneficial for people who are oppressed, and I would like to thank everybody who contributed to this event. I hope God give you this, and I hope those actions will be sustainable, and we should be staying behind of those works. We should do what we have to do continuously. Unfortunately, we have this national defense and we have this independence. There's this occupation, national defense, and we have independence. And after independence, you also have to be grateful. For that, we have to do what we have to do. Then you will protect your independence. Hopefully, the decisions we will make after the decisions we get, I hope we will have independence. I would like to thank all of you.
Thank you very much. And it is very important to say that Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum was giving a full support from day one of the Gaza Tribunal. Its full support made all of this happen, and it was crucial to achieve everything that Gaza Tribunal has achieved during the lasting of this project. So now I'm calling His Excellency Mr. Taha Ayhan. He is the president of the ICYF.
The Chair of the Gaza Tribunal, Dr. Falk, esteemed jury members, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the end of this important gathering, we stand together at a moment that requires both reflection and determination. Over the past 4 days, the Gaza Tribunal has revealed painful realities about the situation in Gaza, in Palestine. It has shown the lack of accountability, the weakness of the failed international system, and the deep injustice faced by the people who continue to live under occupation, oppression, and aggression. ICYF, Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, as an international youth organization affiliated with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, is honored to have served as a logistic supporter of this significant global initiative. We decided to support the Gaza Tribunal from the very beginning when Professor Richard Falk proposed it in mid-2024, recognizing it as a vital intellectual and moral effort to document and confront the ongoing genocide as answer to unresponded call of justice by millions of people from all around the world. I want to underline that this initiative is a solid answer of how intellectuals address the world's urgent need. Our engagement reflects the forum's mission and vision as the voice of Islamic youth and demonstrates our continued commitment to advancing justice, solidarity, and youth empowerment across the world. And above all of these, reaching an independent state of Palestine will remain at the core of ICYF. In fact, the Gaza Tribunal final session once more proved that, as humanity, without seeing the end of occupation on Palestine and having an independent Palestine state, none of our other problems also will be seized, since this is at the center of all of our current problems. Recent reports remind us that this is not a matter of the past, but an ongoing tragedy. In the Gaza Strip alone, according to most optimistic estimations, since the beginning of the Israeli aggression, starting from the 9th of October 2023, more than 60,000 civilians have lost their lives and nearly 200,000 have been injured. And millions, around 2 million people have been displaced. Thousands remain missing while the destruction of homes, hospitals, and schools continues. Honestly, it was obvious that in Gaza there are only two sides. The ones fight for the humanity, human dignity, and then the others. And the vast majority of this earth was with the people of Gaza, and this is very happening. And we are aware, even after the ceasefire agreement, the occupation has not ceased its oppression, aggression, and massacres at all. At this point, I want to express my personal heartfelt thanks to His Excellency Honorable Erdogan, the President of the Republic of Turkey, for putting too many efforts on reaching this ceasefire to give a long-deserved breath to Gazan people while keeping occupation out of the table, which would be another disgrace to these heroes of humanity. I also highlight the fact that the former US administration has fallen short to show enough efforts to reach such as ceasefire agreements that could have been reached 1.5 years ago with the same conditions. Since its establishment, the Gaza Tribunal has served as a moral and legal platform to expose the scale of suffering, to highlight the failure of global institutions, and to remind us that the silence and inaction only deepen the injustice. The uniqueness of the Gaza Tribunal lays on the composition of it. The tribunal operates totally independent from all kind of political and financial influences of any third party, while the huge detailed quality judicial work of Chamber 1, where the second chamber is focused on which moral and ethical grounds, how the humanity finds itself watching a genocide online for 2 years long and without any ability to stop it. And the chamber, third, delved into the fact that even though vast majority of Earth are against genocide, how democratical mechanisms for pressing governments are functionless, and the foundations of how this online genocide has affected our moral and ethical values. Its earlier sessions were held in London and Sarajevo, among New York event and Istanbul press conferences, before concluding here in Istanbul. And as an Istanbuler, I am both proud and moved to see this beloved city is the host of this historical moment. Hosting this final session here holds special meaning, since it's a global center of conscience whose people have long stood for an independent and sovereign Palestine state. This tribunal, often described as a court of conscience or people's tribunal, has heard testimonies from more than 150 witnesses and created a valuable moral and legal record that will serve as a reference for justice and accountability efforts worldwide. At the Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, we believe that youth across the Islamic world, including the brave young people of Palestine, must not only observe these events but lead the way in building solutions. In October 2023, the ICYF Executive Board firmly condemned the continuing military aggression against the Palestinian people. And this tribunal should not be seen as an ending today. After having the final verdict of the tribunal today, in this final session of the Gaza Tribunal, now the real job is starting for everyone. As humanity, now we have a verdict in our hand to persuade all the decision makers and the lawmakers and the judges all around the world to implement this statement. We now have a duty to bring all the genociders and their accomplices and their whitewashers in front of the justice. We now have a duty to demand for justice as one voice until the justice is served for everyone and each one. We have a duty to remember the names of the victims of this genocide and honor them and make the future generations know about them and prevent the occupation and their accomplices and their global propaganda machine to make them forgotten. It must be the beginning of a stronger and lasting engagement. The testimonies shared here must turn into policies, and the reports written here must turn into real action. The voice of Palestinian youth must be heard not only in conferences, but in the rebuilding of their society and shaping their destiny. ICYF will continue to advocate globally once the Tribunal's final decision is published and engaging with leaders, parliaments, in United Nations, international organizations, and universities to ensure that justice is pursued and that the moral weight of this initiative reaches every corner of the world. We will keep mobilizing youth networks across the world and strengthening cooperation with governments, universities, and civil society. Our focus will stay on betterment of the youth. Before I conclude, allow me to express my deep gratitude to Dr. Falk for believing us, making us the part of this very historical and vital initiative. On behalf of Dr. Falk and Dr. Elver, I also want to express my heartfelt appreciation to esteemed jurors, members of the Gaza Tribunal, reporters, members of press from all around the world covered the Gaza Tribunal from the beginning, our anchor women, the Gaza Tribunal team and the volunteers, the Witness Eye Channel team, and all the people who put their efforts to make this initiative turn into a solid reality. Your work has reminded the world that truth and justice cannot be silenced. Let this moment not end here, and let it mark the start of a new chapter, where young people are at the front lines of peace, justice, and reconstruction. Together we must ensure that sacrifice of Palestinian people, Gazan people, lead to a future built on freedom, dignity, and hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. He showed us the way and he led us through. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting Professor Dr. Richard Falk, the President of the Gaza Tribunal, to address you. So, Mr. Falk has spoken so far, so I guess he's not going to talk. After jury. Okay, yes, thank you very much. So now I'm calling for jury to speak so we could hear everything that you have to say. If I'm not wrong, Ms. Christine Chinking is supposed to talk. Ms. Christine Chinking is the chair of the Jury of Conscience.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody who is here. And first, I would like to add my thanks and gratitude, as we've just heard, to everybody who has been involved in the tribunal, who has worked so hard in whatever capacity, and of course, especially to President Falk for bringing us all together. It's my very great privilege to read on behalf of the Jury of Conscience the final statement of the Jury of Conscience, the Gaza People's Tribunal. We, the undersigned members of the Jury of Conscience, hereby deliver this statement of findings and moral judgment at the final session of the Gaza People's Tribunal. The jury, guided by conscience and informed by international law, does not speak with the authority of states, but when law is silenced by power, conscience must become the final tribunal. The tribunal is not a court of law, so does not purport to determine guilt or liability of any person, organisation, or state. It is a civil society response to the continuing lack of accountability for the commission by Israel of genocide in the Gaza Strip. We believe that genocide must be named and documented, and that impunity feeds continuing violence throughout the globe. Genocide in Gaza is the concern of all humanity. When states are silent, civil society can and must speak out. The tribunal has brought together a wealth of material in a valuable archive, the existence of which provides lasting evidence of the truth of the genocide against the Palestinian people. The jury expresses our solidarity with the rallies, the marches, the encampment, the flotillas, the strikes, and other actions that protest the genocide and states' unwillingness to hold Israel to account. And it offers a counter-narrative to the security narrative Israel and its allies persistently broadcast, and the labeling of Palestinian suffering as a humanitarian disaster. It is not. It is the deliberate commission of the gravest of crimes, imposed with the direst of consequences. We have heard extensive evidence of the crimes committed by Israel, of the causes of the genocide, of the collusion by and complicity of other actors, of the courageous resistance and resilience by Palestinians and by global civil society. We have heard moving personal testimonies of the physical and mental harms wrought by these crimes and the suffering of the Palestinian people. This concluding statement presents our findings based upon this evidence, the legal standards of the Genocide Convention, human rights treaties, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and the moral imperatives of natural justice. Above all, this statement is grounded in the unyielding belief that every human life has equal worth. No state or ideology has the right to destroy an entire people. Our statement builds upon the testimonies, oral and written, the expert evidence, and the research and analytical papers carried out by many people over the past months. It reiterates and endorses the Sarajevo Declaration adopted in May 2025. First, Israel's crimes. The jury condemns the ongoing genocide and the crimes listed below. We believe these crimes and their impact on the Palestinian people should be separately named to understand the holistic nature of the genocide, its dehumanization of the people, its sadistic character, and its temporality. These crimes did not commence in October 2023, and they will not end with the ceasefire. Deaths and severe physical harm will continue. The physical and psychological trauma of the surviving population will be transmitted through the generations. The jury condemns the commission of the following additional crimes: starvation and famine through the deliberate denial of food, water, and systematic destruction of the entire food system. Domicide. Domicide is more than the international mass destruction of residential properties and their infrastructure, electricity, water, sanitation. A home is about love, life, a repository of memories, hopes, and aspirations. Its destruction causes displacement, trauma, the disintegration of communities, and profound cultural loss. Ecocide. Ecocide describes a particular kind of warfare based on ruination of land fertility, air quality, sources of food and water, catastrophic environmental damage that destroys the capacity to survive after the bombing ceases. The deliberate destruction and targeting of the healthcare system infrastructure, equipment, and personnel. These have been systematic for decades and have become almost total. The most important issue for physical and mental health is the Israeli occupation and the dehumanization of the population. Reprocide, the intentional and systematic targeting of Palestinian reproductive care through the prevention of births, eliminating future lives, and the ability to reproduce life safely. Scholasticide. Scholasticide is the genocide of knowledge, the destruction of Palestine's intellectual future through the killing, silencing, and displacing a generation of students and teachers, obliterations of schools and universities, destroying dreams and aspirations, attacks on journalists. Genocide documentation is carried out by Palestinian journalists, and they and their families are targeted. Silencing these journalists is instrumental to the concealment of the genocide, and more journalists have been killed than in any other conflict. Torture, sexual violence, disappearances, gender-based violence in detention, at checkpoints, in house searches, in displacement, and elsewhere. Politicide. Politicide is the targeted assassination and kidnapping of political and cultural leaders, representatives, activists, and the destruction of civic institutions. The jury finds a coherent and consistent pattern of exterminatory violence in the intentional and targeted destruction of homes, water supplies, schools, hospitals, clinics, universities, cultural and religious institutions, agricultural land, natural ecosystems. The weaponization of hunger, denial of medical care, forced displacement are not collateral damages of war. They are instruments of collective punishment of an entire population and of genocide. They are not justified by any claim of military objectives. Complicity and collusion. The jury finds Western governments, particularly the United States and others, complicit in, and in some cases colluding with, Israel's commission of genocide through provision of diplomatic cover, weapons, weapon parts, intelligence, military assistance and training, and continuing economic relations. Such actions constitute moral failure and breach of their legal duty to prevent genocide and to cooperate to end violation of a peremptory norm of international law, genocide, and the Palestinian right to self-determination. Silence and inaction in the face of genocide are not an option and are other forms of complicity. The jury finds a range of non-state actors to be complicit in genocide. Biased media reporting in the West on Palestine and underreporting of Israeli crimes conform to the economic and political interests of the ruling elites and their allies. Academic institutions, through their investments, support Israel. Staff and student endorsements of Palestine are silenced or disciplined. Israel survives through militarization. Global supply chains that sustain the genocide through weapons, banks, technology, transportation, and other multinational corporations. The high technology sector sustains the machinery of genocide by manipulating contents through algorithms, allowing Israel to watch and plan every airstrike and assassination. Companies that sell cloud capacity to Israel provide the computer power for genocide. The jury considers that the political economy of genocide is the highest form of hyper-imperialism of the 21st century. The jury finds the current global order, structured by power hierarchies and economic dependencies, to have revealed its incapacity to prevent or punish atrocity crimes when committed by the powerful or their allies. The United Nations, paralyzed by the veto and political selectivity, has abdicated its foundational responsibility to, quote, to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The jury, however, commends the United Nations Human Rights Council special procedures including the Commission of Inquiry, and especially the steadfastness of the Special Rapporteur of the Occupied Palestinian Territories, Francesca Albanese, for their affirmation of genocide. Conclusions. The jury affirms that Israel is perpetrating an ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza, within and enabled by a broader settler colonial apartheid regime rooted in the supremacist ideology of Zionism. This campaign is inseparable from over a century-long project targeting Palestinians across all of Palestine and in exile. The root causes of genocide lie in a racist, supremacist ideology, Zionism, that underpins a system aiming to dispossess, dominate, and erase Palestinians, supported by an oppressive neocolonial power structure led by the United States and its allies, shielded by international complicity, including from many Arab and Muslim governments. The jury considers the genocide in Gaza to have several exceptional characteristics. It is perpetuated on a captive population in a tiny, closed territory where Israel controls all entries and exits. It is systematic and carried out with the most advanced technology. Despite Israel's attempts to prevent reporting, it is highly visible in real time. There has been resort to international judicial bodies, the International Court of Justice by South Africa, the request for an advisory opinion by the United Nations General Assembly with respect to UNRWA, the arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court. Yet these have been ignored with impunity by Israel, and other states have made little real process. Minimal sanctions have been imposed. Indeed, it is the International Criminal Court personnel and NGOs assisting the court that have been sanctioned by the United States. So our recommendations. First, ending impunity and ensuring accountability, to hold all those responsible, politically, military, economically, and ideologically, perpetrators, supporters, enablers, and complicit parties, to hold them fully accountable by every lawful means and to the fullest extent of the law, to suspend Israel from international organizations and institutions, particularly the United Nations and its affiliates, to activate UN General Assembly Resolution 377, Uniting for Peace resolution, so the General Assembly can adopt collective measures to mandate a protective force for the Palestinian territories and stop the genocide in Gaza, given the United Nations Security Council's failure to act due to successive US vetoes. Resisting and dismantling oppressive structures. The jury reaffirms the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, to choose their modes of resistance to achieve liberation, freedom, and independence. The jury endorses a global, rights-based strategy to dismantle Zionist structures, identify and map the Zionist regime's sources of power and enabling pillars. The jury calls for building a worldwide movement that weakens, isolates, and dismantles each source through coordinated political, legal, economic, academic, cultural, technological, and social action. To achieve this objective, two main tasks are paramount. First, steadfastness and non-displacement. Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, including Jerusalem, Palestinian communities inside the 1948 lines must remain rooted in their land. There must be no further forced displacement of Palestinians and Palestinians in exile, particularly refugees across the region. Preventing displacement, sustaining steadfastness are essential to maintain the struggle. Second, comprehensive global confrontation. Confront the Zionist movement and regime globally in every sphere, political and diplomatic, legal and human rights, economic and commercial, media, cultural, intellectual, academic, educational, industrial, technological and scientific, arts, tourism, sports. This mobilization centers peoples, movements, parties, unions, civil society organizations and individuals so that solidarity becomes power, normalization is resisted, and the Zionist project is besieged on all fronts. The jury affirms that the struggle is with Zionism as a racist, supremacist, settler colonial enterprise, not with Jews or Judaism. The strategic horizon is a single rights-based political order grounded in equality, decolonization, restitution, and the unfettered right of return. Only this course can end the ongoing genocide and open a path to just and durable peace for all who live in Palestine and beyond. We issue this statement in the name of justice, dignity, and peace, and in remembrance of all those who have perished in Gaza and throughout Palestine. Silence is not neutral. Silence is complicity. Neutrality is to surrender to evil. In solidarity with the people of Gaza and in memory of all victims of genocide, we speak as the jury of conscience, comprising Professor Sami Al-Arian at the end, myself, Christine Chinkin, Dr. Ghada Kami, author Kenizi Murad, Professor Chandra Musavir, and Professor Biljana Vankovska. I thank very much the members of my fellow members of the jury, and thank you.
Thank you very much. We will proceed now. Thank you very much. We will proceed now, and we will hear Mr. Richard Falk as the president of the Gaza Tribunal, as I said, a man who showed us the way and led us through.
welcome to all that are here. It's difficult to speak after such moving words from the jury of conscience that powerfully communicates the essential mission of justice that brought this Gaza Tribunal into being in the first place. And we want to underscore, above all, that this undertaking, from its very beginning, was inspired by the Palestinian heroic struggle of resilience and resistance. And we want to say that our efforts are dedicated not only to those that have survived in the wasteland that is Gaza today, but also those Palestinians everywhere in the world, and particularly in the refugee camps, that have indirectly been suffering all these years. We dedicate the tribunal and its undertaking to the memory of those who have died and to the struggle and well-being and victory of those who have survived. Let me try to thank some of those that have made this tribunal a reality, which took many months of commitment and imaginative work on the part of people around the world, as well as here in Istanbul, that provided the nerve center of our efforts. And first of all, I would thank the rector of this historic University of Istanbul for providing us with these auspices that are as impressive as any academic institution can hope to provide. And we're very grateful for that. And of course, I want to express special thanks to the Jury of Conscience that have done a remarkable performance under extreme time pressure and with a very complex set of issues to address. The jury findings read by Professor Chinkin in the final statement is a very comprehensive and remarkably clear enunciation of what we are attempting to promote and to achieve. And we're very grateful to all of the jury members for this extraordinary contribution to the work of the tribunal. And it will, I think, be something that will be always remembered as a glimmer of light in what has been a dark period in human history. Of course, I can't say enough words of admiration for the witnesses, the journalists, the experts that each have informed the proceedings and given it an emotional as well as a rational foundation in reality that only those that are living with their suppressed guilty conscience deny and seek to perpetuate the lies of state propaganda at a time when the crime of crimes has been committed and is continuing to induce this extreme situation of mass suffering. Many people in the Istanbul team that has handled the practical side of organizing a tribunal of this sort, and particularly this culminating session, have struggled without any kind of formal recognition, but with deep commitment to make this event a success. I also want to say that the group that has established an archive also deserves deep gratitude. Deep gratitude for the hard work of embracing the totality of these terrible realities that have occurred in dramatic form during the last 2 years, and in a deeply profound and profoundly disturbing form for over a century. And we shouldn't forget that the tragedy of the Palestinian people began not on October 7th, but a century and more earlier. We also are extremely thankful to We Witness TV for bringing to their channel and providing us here with some of the most powerful and tragic video representations of the suffering that has been endured. And I also want to thank the steering committee of the Gaza Tribunal that week after week has met and addressed all the issues of that arise among people that are dedicated to a single cause but have differences in how best to achieve those results. I think the statement that we heard from the jury that reality itself has transcended any kind of uncertainty about how to address the comprehensive challenges posed by this genocide. And we're thankful too to the Advisory Policy Council, which has many distinguished members, for associating themselves and lending legitimacy and some advice to our efforts. And of course, it would be irresponsible of me not to mention the formative role that my friend, Dr. His Excellency Taha Ahsan, has played in conjunction with this sponsoring group here in Istanbul and on behalf of the Islamic Cooperative Youth Forum, which has given us the material means and spiritual inspiration to engage in such an ambitious but humanly necessary undertaking. Because the tribunal had significant results by its prior session in Sarajevo and takes seriously the central recommendation that its work does not end with this final session here in Istanbul, that we prepared a complementary statement to that has flowed from the work of the Jury of Conscience, and is, without any prior consultation, is 100% compatible with what we have all heard with such appreciation a few minutes ago. And I present this statement, which is the work of the steering committee and of a number of dedicated members of it that participated in its formulation. The members of the Gaza Tribunal issued this statement at a historic moment of darkness, but in a continuing quest for the light of justice. The Gaza People's Tribunal recognizes that the current genocide in Palestine, rooted in a century of colonization and oppression, represents a watershed moment in the history of our world. If the Israeli perpetrators and their Western enablers are allowed to escape the imperatives of justice, and the Palestinians, survivors, are left without meaningful redress and ultimately their full liberation from the dehumanizing shackles of Zionism and colonialism, the world will have ratified one of the worst atrocities in history. The tribunal notes that if colonialism, apartheid, genocide are not moral red lines, then there are no red lines, and the world that presages will be a world of unprecedented horror. Every member of the human family has a stake in Palestinian justice. Cognizant of this, the Gaza People's Tribunal was established in London in November 2024 as a people's tribunal in the tradition of the Russell Tribunal that was established at the height of US aggression in Vietnam. It convened, the Gaza Tribunal convened public hearings in Sarajevo in May 2025, adopting the historic Sarajevo Declaration as a statement of the principles of the tribunal and of the global quest for justice in Palestine, and take satisfaction from the fact that the Sarajevo Declaration was affirmed by the jury of conscience and by the public reception it has received since its release. Its work over the past year has consisted of the collection of information and analysis, the hearing of witnesses and survivors, the archiving of evidence, and the issuing of appeals to humanity for action to end the genocide and to secure justice for the Palestinian people. Its convening here in Istanbul has brought together members of the tribunal, witnesses, survivors, experts, and an internationally distinguished jury of conscience to issue a moral judgment on the crimes of the Israeli regime and those complicit in their perpetuation, and to set the course for the next phase of the quest for justice in Palestine. The members of the Gaza Tribunal welcome the findings of the jury of conscience, as already suggested, applaud their moral clarity, and compliment their capacity to produce this extraordinary document and commitment to the struggle to see their implementation of recommendations in full. The accelerated genocide of the past 2 years has shocked the conscience of humanity. The images of an audacious cruelty are forever seared in the minds of decent people everywhere, and the echoes of the cries of its victims will forever ring in our ears. We will forget none of it. The brutal attacks on an imprisoned civilian population, the intentional infliction of hunger, thirst, and disease as weapons of genocide, the targeting of bullets and bombs and drones at innocents, the targeting of bullets and bombs and drones accompanied by mass arrests and imprisonment in notorious, dangerous, in dangerous and cruel dungeons, the systematic hearings, systematic beatings and torture and sexual violence of the genocidal perpetrators, and the sniping of toddlers, infants for sport, the systematic destruction of hospitals, schools, churches, mosques, homes, refugee shelters and facilities, agricultural fields, food stores, even cemeteries, and the deliberate targeting of civilian truth tellers, journalists, medical personnel, aid workers, and other protected persons. So too will we remember the arrogant, genocidal threats and declarations of the perpetrators and their cruel laughter and public celebration of their crimes, all recorded forever in a catalog of transparent shame. We warn the world today that the genocide in Palestine has not ended. The Israeli regime continues to murder Palestinians in Gaza with its Western-supplied bullets and bombs. It continues to obstruct the delivery of food and medicine to the survivors. It continues to impose its unlawful siege on the survivors. Its 2-year systematic imposition of hunger, disease, injury, the plaguing of all of Gaza with toxic chemicals and explosive ordnance, its destruction of most shelter, as well as the infliction of mass mental disorder and impaired development capacities for surviving civilians, will all continue to claim victims of the genocide for years to come. Even as the genocide continues to bleed the Israeli regime, has extended the annihilation phase of the genocide to the West Bank, where land and livelihoods and lives are claimed every day in the ethnic cleansing and racist assaults of the Israeli army and its violent settlers. Nor do the colonial maneuvers reflected in the so-called Trump plan or in the New York Declaration plan offer any hope for an end to the genocide or for freedom or justice for Palestine. Even as we welcome any ceasefire, we note that the Israeli regime has continued to violate with impunity the current declared cessation of violence by the daily killings of Palestinians and the continued obstruction of humanitarian aid. We reject the provisions of both plans that would violate fundamental Palestinian rights of self-determination, the essential elements of which are agency, sovereignty, authentic representation, and unified leadership. The proposed plans presuppose impunity for Israeli genocide and apartheid, normalize the Israeli regime, ignore the rights of the Palestinian people under international law, and impose proxy occupation and colonial control over the victims of genocide, while doing nothing to rein in the perpetrators and accomplices of genocide. Palestinians must lead the restoration of Gaza, and Israel and its enablers must be held responsible for all reparations. We demand accountability for the perpetrators and their complicit enablers, redress for the victims and survivors, action to address the root causes of Zionist colonization, occupation, and apartheid, rejection of all efforts to normalize the perpetrator regime and its criminal acts, and freedom for Palestine. In sum, we demand justice, and to these ends, we call on people of conscience everywhere to intensify their efforts to secure justice for the Palestinian people through increased and coordinating efforts to isolate the Israeli regime even further than it is now isolated as a pariah state, reject its normalization, and to hold it to account through boycotts, divestments, sanctions, military embargoes, criminal prosecutions of perpetrators and complicit actors, civil actions against those benefiting from harms, education of our neighbors, public protest and civil disobedience, and the amplification of calls for the liberation and freedom of Palestine now and in the future. Thank you very much. Should I go back to the...
Thank you, Mr. Folk. Gaza Tribunal goes on through all of us, because as we have heard so far, in times like these, silence is not an option. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is the end.